Hey guys, hope you guys are doing well today. Today we're talking about gratitude and good enough parenting. When children, again, coming from CPTSD, from the Surviving to Thriving Pete Walker, when developing children receive good enough parenting, they feel that life is a gift, even though it typically does come with some difficult and painful experiences. The term good enough parenting derives from the work of renowned adult and child psychologist D.W. Winnicott, who coined the term good enough mothering to describe his observation that children do not need uh, parents to be perfect. He noticed through his long career that children who grew up with their self esteem and capacity for intimacy intact when their parents were reasonably consistent with their love and support. Nowadays, many therapists attach the praise good enough to concepts like friend, partner, therapist, or person. This is usually done to deconstruct perfectionistic expectations of relationships, expectations that are so unrealistic that they are destructive to essentially worthwhile relationships. When I apply the concept of good enough to people, I generally mean that the person is essentially good hearted, tries to be fair, and meets his or her commitments a large portion of the time. I'd also like to apply good enough to other concepts, such as good enough job, a good enough try, a good enough outing, a good enough day, or a good enough life. I apply the concept literally to contradict all black and white thinking, all underlined thinking of the critic, which reflexively judges people and things as defective and useless unless they are perfect. Good enough parents provide generous amounts of support, protection, and comfort. They also guide their children to deal constructively with recurring existential difficulties such as loss, real villains, painful world events, and disappointments with friends and family. Most importantly, they model how disappointments with intimates can be repaired. A key way to do this is to easily forgive their children for mistakes and shortcomings. Children who receive good enough parenting easily recognize and protect themselves from bullying and exploitative people because they do not have to become accustomed with being treated unfairly. Isn't that crazy? Children who receive good enough parenting are easily recognize and protect themselves from bullying and exploitative people because they do not have to become accustomed to being treated like shit. Growing up in a safe and loving family naturally enhances a child's capacity to notice and enjoy the many gifts that life brings. He learns that there is enough good in life to significantly outweigh the necessary losses and trials. In the traumatizing family, however, there is little to nothing good enough, and hence little for which to be grateful. The child instead is forced to overdevelop a critic that hyperfocuses on what is dangerously imperfect within himself as well as others. This sometimes helps him or her hide aspects of himself that might be punished. It may further assist to avoid people who might be punishing. Unfortunately, years of this habituates the child into only seeing herself, life, and others in a negative light. Consequently, she grows up and becomes, when she grows up and becomes free of her truly harmful family, she cannot see that life offers many new possibilities. Her ability to see the good in herself and certain safe enough others remains developmentally arrested. The culture of gratitude requires a balanced perspective. You can learn to see and appreciate the good in life without giving up on your ability to discern what is truly negative and unacceptable in the present. This is another really good reading of how just that beginning, lack of good enough parenting and inability to establish a positive relationship really sets you on a course of being unable to replicate that with other people across time, and how that really impacts your basic sense of joy, happiness, and positive emotion, optimism. You know, how much despair and grief you will inherently feel when you lack those experiences that are so foundational to your development. They're so foundational. And so the important thing is, you know, is coming back to the critic. You have to be careful with the cognitive distortions, the other thinking, not allowing yourself to cast out any good examples, because that is also just self-punishment, telling yourself, oh, there were no good memories, there were no positive outcomes of this kind of childhood situations you grew up in. Of course there were some good things, and so you have to be careful not to overshadow the negative. My lips and hands are so dry. Everything is so dry. Y'all know I'm trying to move to the beach. somewhere in the tropics, guys. I need some warmer weather because I'm tired of this. I'm getting too old for this cold weather right now. So I need some tropical for a few years, coming back here, speaking of the gratitude, um, parenting myself into a warmer climate because I need a warmer climate to help gain some positive reference experiences. And so, yeah, this is great, good enough parenting. I was going to say, try not to be overly critical so that you're not missing the good parts, but then don't gaslight yourself also to make yourself believe something is the case that wasn't the case. That's why all of these things are so important as we work our way through this reparenting journey, as we begin to um, come back to ourselves. We don't want to fool ourselves, and we don't want to be unnecessarily hard on ourselves, because sometimes when you're coming through this kind of childhood experience, you can be very, very hard on yourself, judging yourself very harshly, discounting the achievements, discounting the positive things, and that really comes from not having had enough safety in the first place to be able to internalize it. And thanks again for being here, and I will see you guys again soon. Take care and be well.